This is a Mac Studio M3 Ultra, and this is the last piece in what I consider to be almost a perfect home studio setup, but it's been a long journey to get here. It was 4 years ago when I first started using and customizing this space, and I've both learned a lot about what my needs are and made a ton of mistakes along the way. That, coupled with some unforeseen circumstances, recently forced me to rethink my space and how I was using it. So a lot of thought went into not only making it look great, but more so to be as functional as possible, and that required a lot of customization. It's meant being super selective about what's in here and how it's being used, and custom making and automating a bunch of it. And today I want to go over everything here. Why I chose or made the things that I did, how I use all of it in my workflow, including the Mac Studio, and how a lot of what you see here has been extremely beneficial. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. For the past few years, this space has always felt somewhat half-finished. I've always done my best to make it look good, but for a long time it was not only used to record these videos, but also to work out, and my studio and actual desk setup were in two separate rooms, so everything was just insanely inefficient, and I really wanted to streamline things and keep everything work-related in the same room to make things a little bit easier on myself, and I was kind of forced into that right at the beginning of the year. Around Christmas time, the area where my desk was flooded due to a foundation crack in our home, but luckily the room I'm in now was spared from damage, so I decided to kick things into gear and basically just tear apart everything and start from scratch in here. Now, full disclosure, I did reach out to a few brands to be a part of this video and help me with my space, so you will see a little indicator for any brands that I worked with as part of this video, but just know that I am super selective about the gear that I use and promote, and I think this is all great stuff, but I just wanted to be super transparent with you guys. Now, I started out by modeling everything up here in Blender, which gave me a pretty good feel for how I could properly use the space and have enough room to move around, especially introducing a desk in here, and also just to work through a bunch of concepts in terms of colors, lighting, and automation. I decided to keep the darker tones from my old desk space, so you'll see a lot of black furniture with darker walnut surfaces, and the paint that I used was this rainforest green color from Behr. This is their Dynasty line that's supposed to be better at not showing marks or scratches, which I definitely need banging around in here so much. And most of the furniture that you see in here is from IKEA, which I'll link in the description along with everything else here, but let's just talk about the desk space itself, because it's really what powers most of what's going on here. The desktop, again, is just a dark walnut countertop from IKEA with Alex drawers, which is a pretty common setup. I've moved away from a standing desk because I rarely ever use my desk standing, and this gives me a nice wide space to work on, which has been great. But the hardwood monitor stand that sits on top of that is made by Desky, and there's a couple of reasons why I chose that particular stand. For one, the color matches almost perfectly with a desk, but it's also wide enough to support a monitor with a couple of speakers. And even though I bought this before I knew when the new Mac Studio would be released, I knew I would probably end up buying one, at least to test, and this has just enough clearance to slide the Mac Studio underneath. On top of that stand, right now I've got this ASUS PA27J CV ProArt 5K display. And I've been kind of going back and forth using this versus the Studio display. The Studio display has outstanding build quality, and it's great everything is built into it, and you really only need one cable, but the picture is actually better on this ProArt display with better color accuracy and contrast. And the only thing that really holds it back is the black uniformity, which isn't the greatest. Still, this is a true 10-bit panel. It has HDR, which the Studio display does not have, and a bunch of other features like height, tilt, and swivel adjustments that you don't get on the Studio display. And it is a fraction of the cost at $800 USD, where the Studio display is twice that. Obviously, you do lose some things like the built-in webcam and the speakers, but I'd planned on replacing both of those anyway. The studio display speakers are decent, but where I use my sound in here for multiple things like editing videos, listening to music, and playing sound back through the connected Apple TV that we're gonna get into in a bit, they just aren't sufficient, so I've went with these Kanto ORAs that sound amazing and take up a relatively small surface area. The ORAs are kind of a cross between desktop speakers and studio monitors, so they're perfect for when I edit these videos. These ones have 3-inch woofers and 3/4-inch tweeters and have both Bluetooth and USB-C inputs. Having USB-C is great because you get a digital signal with no latency or noise, and these do lean to the sides of being studio monitors, so they are great for editing, but they're outstanding for just about any audio, and they look fantastic as well. Outside that, using this ASUS monitor, I still needed a webcam. The built-in one on the studio display is honestly kind of terrible, and I wanted something a little bit more versatile, which is why I decided to go with this OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite. The thing I love about this webcam is not only how portable it is, being able to place it almost anywhere I want, but just the level of quality. Unlike the studio display, which uses a 1080p ultra-wide camera that just crops the image and follows you around, the Tiny 2 Lite has a 1/2-inch CMOS sensor with a 4K picture that actually moves the camera around via a gimbal, and the quality is much better. All the movement is done smoothly with AI auto tracking and auto zoom that keeps me in frame, and on top of that, it's got a gesture control system where just by using my hands, I can adjust the camera angle, zoom level, and tracking without touching any buttons. And the whole system works flawlessly, but if I do ever want to customize things further, say if I want to adjust the camera orientation or the focus mode, I can do that along with a host of other things in the OBSBOT Center app. There's also dual omnidirectional microphones with noise reduction that sounds super clear, and to be honest, it's got all the features that I'll ever need, and it's $179 USD, which is almost half the cost of the regular Tiny 2. And they are having a spring sale right now where you can get up to 22% off plus another 5% with my discount code. So it is much more affordable, and it's just a great little product. In fact, if you price that webcam with the speakers I bought and the monitor, it's still cheaper than the studio display, so it's worth considering if you're looking to do something similar. But having said that, affordability pretty much went out the window with the thing that they're plugged into. This is the brand new Mac Studio with the M3 Ultra, and to be honest, I did not foresee myself getting this particular machine, mainly because it's a whopping $4,000 USD or 5,500 Canadian, which is a crazy amount to spend on a Mac, especially since even the most basic M-series Macs can do almost anything these days. For most of what I do, this machine is overkill. This has a 28-core CPU and 60-core GPU with 96 gigs of RAM and a 1TB SSD. And it's not like I felt a lot of slowness with my M4 Pro Mac Mini most of the time, which I did plan to keep at my desk long term, but I have had some specific pain points recently where the M3 Ultra really speeds up my workflow. That is almost entirely to do with the media engine on here, where this machine has 4 video encoding engines versus 2 on the M4 Max or 1 on the M4 Pro, and with me proxying and rendering a ton of footage recently for various projects, this is literally saving me hours of time each week, as the M3 Ultra renders video 4 to 5 times faster than my Mac Mini. On top of that, resource-heavy plugins that take forever to process on the Mini are much faster on the Studio, and I'm hoping that this will be a mainstay for years to come. The built-in SD card reader has been nice to have as a creator, especially since I've been struggling to find a decent Thunderbolt 5 hub to go along with these new Macs. I've just had a lot of trouble getting decent speeds out of any of the ones that I've tried, so I just haven't been using one, but I think I've finally found a solution to that as well. This is the CalDigit Element 5 hub, and this is the first Thunderbolt 5 hub that retains high speeds with my external Thunderbolt 5 enclosure, and it's got a few other things that I really like about it. For one, this is a smaller hub, and the thing about these hubs in the past is they always looked portable or compact, but the power brick was always gigantic. This one is way smaller than the previous Element hub, I think CalDigit says it's 42% smaller, so it's actually a bit more portable if you want to pack this around with you, but outside that, it's got outstanding build quality, and you get 4 Thunderbolt 5 ports capable of 80 gigabits per second, 2 USB-C, and 3 USB-A ports at 10 gigabits per second, and power delivery up to 90 watts if you're connecting this to a MacBook. You'll also get a bandwidth boost of up to 120 gigabits per second if you connect high refresh rate displays with high resolution to this hub. So you're kind of future-proofed there. The only thing that you need to be aware of with any hub, regardless of the brand, is Apple does limit external display support to 2 monitors, where other platforms will support up to 3, but this is hands down the best Thunderbolt 5 hub that I've come across so far. Other than that, I'm still using the same Magic keyboard and MX Master 3 mouse, but I switched out the desk mat from my old setup to this brown professional leather Harbour London one, which is super nice and looks outstanding. My wife is also using one of these in her space, but these give you a nice little slot for running your cables through if you've got wired accessories, and the quality level is pretty hard to beat. That basically covers the new stuff at my workstation, but because I'm not just working at my desk in here, but filming and testing products, I had to think both about how I was going to test products and how they would come across on camera, and that's where the fun really starts. One of the biggest issues I had with my old setup was that virtually nothing was automated, and simple things like turning on lights was a huge pain. I'd have to go around turning on each individual light, and sometimes I'd forget to turn on lights while filming, and I just wanted to simplify that whole process. So all the lights that I bought are either smart lights themselves or are plugged into smart sockets, so I can just use voice commands to turn them on or off with one minor twist. I wanted as much of this stuff as possible to work with Siri, and most of the smart accessories that I bought are made by Govee, which do not support HomeKit, but with the help of an old Raspberry Pi and Homebridge, I was able to add everything to Apple Home. So now when I say, "Hey Siri, turn on Studio," my entire studio space turns on, and I can control them from my phone except for my video lights, which I turn on manually. For those, I've got 2 Amaran lights. One is a 200D, which is my key light that lights most of my videos. The one on top of the shelf that I'm currently using as a hair light is a 100X. And one of my favorite new lights is this Viltrox tube light that I'm currently using to fill in the dark side of my face, but I use that for all kinds of things, and those are super affordable. I'll come back to this side of the room in a couple of minutes, but on the side with the desk, I also mounted an old TV, which is powered by an Apple TV that's hidden behind it. The Apple TV makes it easy to extend as a display from my Mac. Say if I finished editing a video and I want to cast it to the TV before I publish it, or say if I ever decide to review TVs, I can easily test those out there, or just have something playing in the background as I work. And all my wires are hidden through the little channels that I 3D printed that fit between these wood slats, which just keep everything clean looking. I use my 3D printer a ton, and that is the Bamboo Lab A1, which I can't recommend enough. It's super easy to use, it's relatively affordable, and it just works. I think I initially had some trouble feeding the filament through the first time that I tried to use it, but ever since then, it's been great, and I honestly don't know how I survived without it beforehand, because it seems like I use it for almost everything, whether it's making custom brackets for my desk cable tray, MagSafe chargers, or things that help with videos like tablet holders or the neon rope holders that go along the walls. Fair warning though, it does take up a lot of surface area. If you get the AMS Lite combo that holds the 4 spools of filament, I found it extremely hard to place, so I ended up killing 2 birds with 1 stone and taking the old bench that I'd made that was previously in here, which I found to be a bit too wide, chopping that down and staining it to match everything else, and I used the cutoff to make a stand, which I think is a perfect size. The only issue that I have with 3D printing is I tend to get lots of little bits of plastic everywhere, mostly from cutting off supports or the occasional rogue filament purge off the printer. And I don't want my cats walking around in here, maybe eating that stuff, so I need to keep the floors in here clean, which is what I was initially struggling with. The problem was, the rugs in here are both dark and they hide a lot of filament and support cutoffs pretty well, and the Dyson vacuum that I have sucks on carpets. In a bad way, and again, I don't want this to be another thing that I constantly have to be aware of, which is where this Dreame L10s Gen 2 comes in. This robot vacuum costs around $600 USD, which compared to similar products offers a lot more value for the price. Not only does the L10s Gen 2 do an amazing job vacuuming, but it also mops, so it's a pretty powerful all-in-one solution that simplifies and automates cleaning away, so I don't really have to worry about it at all. In terms of vacuuming, it does a much better job of picking up debris than my Roomba, and most robot vacuums for that matter. Dreame says this has 10,000 pascals of Vormax suction power, which, for context, a regular vacuum like this is usually half that, so this is perfect for this space, but now that we've finally got the flooring put in the rest of the basement, I use it everywhere. The mop feature has been amazing for keeping the new floors clean, where there are dual rotary mops that apply pressure and scrub the floor, and also uses something called Mop Extend Robo Swing technology that essentially just swings the mop out up to 4 centimeters to get all the tough to reach areas where there are a ton of down here. And there is an automatic solution and water refilling system that keeps the mops damp as it goes, which is super cool. Again, the best part about this, like a lot of things in this space, is this is all automated, so it also does auto mop cleaning and drying and dust emptying into the base station, where you can set it and forget it for up to 75 days. And right now you can save up to $400 on the Dreame website and an extra $25 with code DreameKyle at checkout. Now, those rugs in my studio space are not solely just for aesthetic reasons, but also to reduce some of the reflection or echo I get when I record audio in here. That's also why I added these peel and stick sound absorbing tiles from Amazon to the ceiling, as well as the wood slat panels, so that I can just sit down and record without worrying too much about sound quality or unwanted noise. This side of the room I definitely wanted to look good, and I've already talked a bit about the lighting, but I wanted to make it a lot cleaner than it was before, where I used to have this big industrial shelf that looked okay, but it really wasn't ideal for storage, and it just always felt messy to me, where with these Besta cabinets from IKEA, I've got everything organized how I want them, and I don't have to look at everything inside all the time like I did on the other shelf. Both the top and bottom units are floating shelves, and those were a bit tricky to mount with the slat panels sticking out from the wall. Beside those and behind the cabinets, there's 1x3 boards drilled into the studs that act as a spacer to make them even and level, but beyond that, I added these concrete-looking vinyl tiles that I found at Home Depot and the wood slats I got from Costco, which are hands down the best deal that I found. The brand on those, I believe, is Artica, and they were only $50 Canadian in-store for 4 panels of the walnut-colored ones and $70 online for the black ones on the other side of the room, where normally those are at least double that. Those also dampen the sound a little bit, and when I record audio in this space, I've got this clamp from an old podcast arm that I fastened to the bench that I mentioned earlier, and I 3D printed this adapter that converts part of a boom pole to be desk mounted, where I attach my Sennheiser MKH416 mic that runs to a Zoom F3. The bench is on wheels so that I can move it around easily for whatever it is that I'm filming, so just to make sure that everything looks consistent when I sit in front of the camera and film, I've drawn 2 markers on the baseboard where the edge of my table goes and where my tripod should sit, and that way everything is usually pretty predictable. I film everything on 2 cameras. One is a Sony a7 IV and the other is an FX30, which is what I use most of the time now. I know that a lot of you guys ask me about cameras, but truthfully these days you don't really need a super fancy camera to get nice footage, and I would say it's more about technique and composition than anything. That's why the general aesthetic and lighting in this room was so important to me, and also just to be super thoughtful about how I can use it best and fill it with things that I enjoy or I find interesting. I spend the majority of my time during the week in here, so it was really important to get this right and have a nice functional space that I can enjoy, because I think that it does translate into the actual work itself. The automations and customizations have been super fun to work at and play around with, and I'll keep figuring things out in here and playing around with this space. And I encourage everyone else to do the same with theirs. Like I said, I'm gonna pop links to everything in this setup in the description, and if there are things that you see in here that I did not mention that you want to know about, feel free to drop a comment down below. I tried to include as much as I could in this video, but there just simply isn't enough time to go over every little detail. That's all I got for you today. I hope you found this video useful or enjoyable. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more tech-related content or help me build a home automation that plays soothing affirmations to your houseplants, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.